back to Reunited States, the podcast where we aim to bring back civil discourse back to our national dialogue. From Los Angeles, California, my name is Tyler Ehrig.
And from Manchester, New Hampshire, my name is Jesse Saywell.
So Jesse, we have some things to follow up on from last week. Where do we want to start?
Yeah, so we're going to get into some lightning news as well as discussion of the GOP-led bill that is currently in the House. We're also going to talk about Trump's meeting with the South African president today. But I did want to start off addressing the big news that broke over the weekend, of course, which was President Biden's prostate cancer diagnosis that was revealed to the public. And it's interesting timing, of course, that gets revealed just a couple of days before the release of the book that was that we were discussing last week, some of the revelations that came out. I have purchased the book, Original Sin by Alex Thompson and Jake Tapper, and I have started reading through to get more information. And it is interesting, when we talk about President Biden and his legacy, of course. And I do think, first and foremost, I just want to say how sad it makes me to hear that the president is battling prostate cancer, that it's as serious as it is. It is, from what I have heard, it is incurable at this point, though it is certainly treatable where he very well may be able to live for an extended period. But this makes me sad. All of this makes me sad because anyone who knows me knows that I love Joe Biden. I have been a Biden fan for a very long time. I've been someone who admired the man because I believe, and still believe to this day, that he was a true public servant, someone who committed to serving the country and did genuinely do so out of a desire to make the lives of the citizens better. I do believe that he loved the country and that he continues to love the country. He was an empathetic person who had dealt with so much. And the book really goes into this as well, diving into why Biden was so insistent that he could run for a second term in the first place, and then also why he was so insistent that he would not step down, was his history. I mean, his history has been well documented, but for those who may not know, he lost his wife and his daughter in a tragic car accident, right after he was elected to the United States Senate. He got sworn into the U.S. Senate in the hospital with his son, Beau. And then he battled 2 brain aneurysms. He dealt with that. He bounced back from that. He ran for president, had a very, very poor showing running for president 2 times. And in the second time, he gets chosen as vice president, bounces back as one of the most impactful vice presidents, if not the most impactful vice president in the history of the country. He was losing primaries, did not look like he was going to be the nominee in 2020, bounced back from that, not only won the nomination, but then beat a sitting president, Donald Trump. He's the only person to beat Donald Trump. So, yes, President Biden, has this mentality, as Jake Tapper and Alex Thompson put it in the book, of get back up. He could always get back up. But what is clear is, and from reading the book, and I have not finished the book at this point, again, it just came out yesterday as we record this, but it is very clear that there is blame to be thrown around, both at his staffers and his inner circle, which began calling themselves the Politburo. That's what they called kind of the inner circle, the small inner circle around him. These are the people that were feeding him, to be frank, bullshit in terms of what the actual reality was on the ground. They were feeding him bullshit about polls. He was really believing, even up until Chuck Schumer met with him after that disastrous debate. Chuck Schumer met with President Biden and said, I could maybe find 5 senators that support and that believe you could win a presidential election. He said there was a 5% chance that you could win. And Chuck Schumer later went on to say, was interviewed, he said the answer was probably closer to 1%. Biden believed that he had a better than 50% chance at that point in time of winning the election. That's not true. There's plenty of other things we could dive into. I really don't want to dunk on the guy, But I do think that this is a major, major situation. And while I understand that health is personal to a lot of us, he was the president of the United States. And as the book very clearly states, the first blame has to go on him. He knew he was dealing, it's very clear that he knew he was dealing with diminished state, and he was in denial about it. And that he was making choices actively to try and cover up his diminished state. And then, again, blame falls on Democrats that surrounded him, and blame falls on other Democrats that chose not to speak out about this out of fear of the party, because the party itself made this a toxic and scary situation. So there's a lot in the book. It's very interesting. As I find more, we'll certainly touch back in with you about it. I'm sad about what has happened. I'm sad about the fact that it really has tarnished his legacy. But I'll admit, as someone who has loved Joe Biden, these revelations have changed the way I feel about the man. Because it was clear that his ego got the best of him. His ego was what was leading the decision-making in terms of running for another term, which no one expected him to do. Even in his inner circle, no one expected him to do. And that was his downfall. It was a bad decision, and it led directly to the election of Donald Trump. And the book goes in very clearly in terms of how many Democrats, to this day, myself included, feel like Biden is the reason that Trump is now back in the White House. And it really comes down to that. As David Plouffe, who was the kind of mastermind of the Obama campaign, who came out of retirement to run Kamala Harris's kind of last-ditch effort, he said, Biden fucked us. He totally fucked us, is the quote. And he did. It's very clear. There was no coming back from this. They were in denial of something, and it's sad. It's really sad. So that's the news there on the Biden front. We needed to address it. We talked about it plenty last week. But, of course, with that being said, I am wishing the best for Biden and his family. I still do feel, as many of us do, like he was Grandpa Joe. I mean, he was that kind of empathetic figure for many of us, which is why it was so hard for so many of us to see him go out the way he went out. But this has made it worse. This has definitely impacted the way that he will be viewed by historians, and it makes me sad. But it is something that the Democratic Party has to address. You can't just ignore this. And I have heard plenty of people recently say, Biden should have just stayed on the ticket. That's moronic, first and foremost. Like, I just have to call that's the most ridiculous thing. Yes, Kamala lost. Biden would have lost by more, a lot more. It's very clear. The statistics are very, very clear. He would have lost by a lot more. So that argument is rather silly. I've seen that from several people, several Democrats in recent days posting about that. That's nonsense. Most of us who have a memory longer than a fly remember how bad that debate was and how bad the polling was. And it was not going to get better. But what happened, and the only thing we can do is, going forward, have a discussion about age, the realities of time. The great Tennyson quote that starts off the book: "Though much is taken, much abides, and though we are not now that strength which in old days moved earth and heaven, that which we are, one equal temper of heroic hearts, made weak by time and fate, but strong in will, to strive, to seek, to find, and not to yield." If you hear that and you think that sounds familiar, that's actually the speech that Judi Dench gives in the Skyfall movie, which is all about age and all about like knowing when you're past your prime and when things have changed and you're not at your fittest. So, yeah, that was it was an error of hubris, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I think if there's anything important to add, it's that for those that have expected this book to come out, I think there's a lot of folks that are expecting this book to be this kind of Biden slander novel. And it's certainly how the right has been kind of framing it in the media. I've seen a lot of the Fox News articles that are popping out in regards to the book, and kind of using it as a smoking gun for how ineffective and how awful his presidency was. that is not what this book is. This book is not a slander of the president. It is more about, like you said, this singular decision and how it affected so much more of his legacy and the direction the United States took moving past 2024. So in other news, we also talked last week about the $400 million jet that was offered by the government of Qatar to the U.S. Government, well, specifically to Trump, I should say. And now we've received confirmation that the Pentagon has indeed accepted this bribe jet, as I like to call it, and they've approved plans to retrofit it with various security requirements so that it can be used as the new Air Force One, at least until Trump leaves, in which case it will become Trump Force One. I expected them to accept this. This is ridiculous. This is very unprecedented and very bizarre. And, one of the ridiculous things, there's a YouTube channel I follow called Legal Eagle. They're great. And they have a video about this exact incident. And in the video, they detail precisely all the changes and the expected costs that would be required in order to retrofit this thing and make it Air Force One viable. It honestly could be as expensive, if not more expensive, than the jet itself. Like, you need to put missiles on this thing, anti-air missiles. You have to put anti-nuclear devices, anti-EMP devices. It has to be able to stay in the air, flying for 20 some odd days without requiring to land and refuel. And, of course, it needs to have state-of-the-art communications devices and all these other things. There's a laundry list of items that are required by Air Force One to have in order to be Air Force One. Of course, this jet doesn't have any of those things right now. It's just a 747. So now that it's been accepted, it expected huge cost to be incurred in the simple retrofitting of this luxury vehicle.
Your tax dollars at work.
Thank you, Donald Trump.
Yeah, just crazy. I don't want to harp on that one too much. It speaks for itself. It's ridiculous. What a joke. What an absolute joke. One final bit of lightning news. The Homeland Security Secretary, Kristi Noem, that Kristi Noem, the woman who shot her dog and wrote about it in a book, she was asked in a Senate hearing yesterday to define habeas corpus. And she defined it as, quote, a right that the president has to be able to remove people from this country, end quote. My senator, Maggie Hassan of New Hampshire, responded with, that is not correct. She went on to say, quote, habeas corpus is the legal principle that requires that the government provide a public reason for detaining and imprisoning people. If not for that protection, the government could simply arrest people, including American citizens, and hold them indefinitely for no reason, end quote. She went on to say that habeas corpus is what separates us and makes us a free republic in comparison to a place like North Korea. She also brought a smile to my face as she referenced the fact that she is from the live free or die state, and as such we care very greatly about the idea of habeas corpus. How disturbing is it that the Homeland Security Secretary, the head of Homeland Security, does not know what habeas corpus is? Very clearly does not know what habeas corpus is. She tried to cover it up and be like, Abraham Lincoln used it. That's like the way, when a student doesn't know the answer, but they know one little tiny thing about it, they can throw that in there and be like, no, I'm smart, but they don't actually know what it means. Abraham Lincoln used it, but retroactively asked for Congress's support. Habeas corpus has never been used without congressional approval and support, ever. So this is the idea that habeas corpus is a right held by the president. That's ridiculous. It's a right held by the people of this country. It is a right against the president. It is protecting us from the president and from the government. And you would think the people who champion the Second Amendment as if it, was written by God himself would know something about habeas corpus.
I'll correct only one thing of what you just said, and that is Christinum definitely knows what habeas corpus means. She's just lying about it.
Are you sure?
Um,
How, how are you sure? What makes you think that she knows what that is?
they know what it is. They know exactly what's going on. They know what they're doing.
No, they don't. No, they don't. I don't think
disagree.
she knows.
These
Sarah
people
Palin,
are smarter than we give them credit
No,
for. They know
no,
what they're
no.
doing.
No, not all of them. No, they're not. She is in that job not because she knows anything about national security. She was the governor of South Dakota. And she was the governor of South Dakota, and she's only in that job because she was an pro-Trump and told him that she would try to get his face on Mount Rushmore. That is why she's in that job. And the idea that we assume that they know anything anymore, sorry, after Sarah Palin, that's out the window for me. Sarah Palin did not know the difference between Iraq and Afghanistan. She did, and they put her up for president. No, I'm sorry. I will push back. I don't think she knows. Just looking at her, when they asked her the question, she looked absolutely terrified to answer the question. You could just see it as a teacher. I know that look when you call on a student and they don't know the answer. That was the look in her eyes. Was the holy shit? How do I talk my way out of this? And so she went into a right-wing talking point to cover up the fact that she doesn't know. That's my opinion. You may be right. Maybe she does know, but I don't know. It doesn't seem like it.
It definitely doesn't seem that way. I don't know. I think they hide more than we see. But I'll give you that. She definitely doesn't act like she knows what habeas corpus is. No, do most of these people act like they know what anything is. But I mean, the habeas corpus thing, I mean, this is pretty serious, and the language that was used, you mentioned the right that the president has, like that part alone should be scary. Like the fact that we are talking about the president having rights just generally speaking, and the president has these like inalienable, prerogatives to do effectively what he or she wants, is a massive red flag for anyone that should call themselves an American. It's like you said, rights are something that people have, not presidents, not rulers. That's kind of like the founding principle of our country. It's like you don't have the right over me. I have the right, and you could just, I let you be there. I put you there. Like that's my right that you get to be there, not the other way around. Right? It's a very scary thing. And again, like whether she knows what habeas corpus is or not, it is a very scary thing when you look at the real definition of habeas corpus, which, of course, your senator correctly defined, and telling ourselves that this thing is what Republicans, and notably the Trump administration specifically, are actively trying to remove, strip away from Americans, not illegal immigrants, not, specific people, Americans. They want to strip that right away from Americans. That is why she defined it the way she did. Because that effectively strips the actual right away from you or me or anybody else. And that is a very scary thing. Like you said, if we are devolving to a point where we no longer have the right, or rather we lose the right to be protected from detainment without reason, that's a terrifying notion. That's a very terrifying notion. Because again, we're talking about something that's not just affecting migrants or undocumented or anything, or anyone in those that are in those categories. Which is what they want us to think, right? They want us to think it's just about them, but it's not. Like, when you look at what they're saying, it's very much, they are making changes that are affecting every American in this country, or could affect every American in this country. Very, very terrifying.
Yeah, I just think you're absolutely right on all of this. That I think that in terms of whether it is a conscious choice to change what the definition is, if this was Marco Rubio or Nikki Haley, I would agree with you, because I do know that those people are intelligent human beings who have qualifications to justify being in the jobs that they were in or are in. Kristi Noem's dumber than a box of rocks. Like, I'm sorry. She's dumber than a box of rocks. Like, she wrote about killing a dog, put it into a book, and thought that that would help improve her public image. Like that, she's dumb. She does not know anything. She has no qualifications for the job that she's in. She doesn't know. I genuinely believe that there is a combination in this government, in the MAGA movement, of people who do know better, but they're evil. And then there are people who do know better, but have succumbed out of fear to this. And then there are the true believers, like her and Marjorie Taylor Greene, among many others, Paul Gosar, morons, who genuinely don't know anything. They're not intelligent individuals, and they go off and speak on things they know nothing about. And proof of the fact that she didn't know what habeas corpus is she said President Lincoln used it. No, he didn't use it. He suspended it with congressional approval retroactively. But he suspended it. It is not a right that the president has. She genuinely, this word salad shit. I just think that sometimes we think that they're all morons. They're not all morons. But Kristi Noem's a moron.
All right, I'll give you that. I will give you Kristi Noem's a moron only because I want to repeat the phrase, Kristi Noem is a moron.
Probably shouldn't have said that so many times, because she's director of Homeland Security, so, you know.
Oh no, I hear a knock on my door. All right, well, on to our main conversation. There is currently a bill in the House, a GOP-led tax bill, which is offering, in addition to a variety of things that were on Trump's agenda, $1 trillion in cuts to Medicaid and food stamps. $1 trillion. For perspective, there are 71 million people in this country enrolled in Medicaid, and 42 million people, approximately, that receive food stamps. This is ridiculous. It is so ridiculous that even some Republicans are pushing back on this bill. This is not, while this is a GOP-led endeavor, there's Republican pushback, especially when it comes to these cuts to Medicaid and food stamps. And there are threats right now within GOP leadership to prevent this bill from moving forward, which is kind of hopeful, or at least I thought it was hopeful when I saw this news. But now they face a whole new problem, which is Trump. And speaking directly to these people in the GOP who are opposing this bill and saying, you guys stop right now or else. We will see what happens from that. We will see what, just how powerful Trump's voice still is right now. I imagine it will probably sway many voices to push the bill forward, unfortunately, but, we'll kind of see.
Yeah, let's call this bill what it really is. Let's break this down, okay? So this is a tax cut on the top 5% of Americans and a tax hike on the bottom 95% of Americans. This is a handout to an older generation. I have to say this. Like, when we talk about wealth in this country, there is such a disparity in age. Because really, when you're benefiting millionaires, the vast majority of those people are not like Mark Zuckerberg's age. The vast majority of those people are in their 60s, 70s, 80s. People that have worked in corporate America for a long time, they're boomers, and they now have a lot of money. And what we are doing is screwing young people. And that's really where what we need to be more clear about, and what the Democratic Party needs to be more clear about. This bill is just another example of screwing over young people, because it's not touching Medicare, for the record, which old people like, and even rich old people use Medicare because it's such a great program. It's attacking Medicaid, which is for younger people who aren't eligible for Medicare but need medical help. And also what this is going to do, this bill is going to destroy rural hospitals. It's going to actively destroy not just the ability for people in rural communities to get health insurance, but for them to even be able to get to a hospital. it's actually, this is a hospital killer in rural communities. It's insane. You can understand why there's some Republicans who are really like, no. Do I think it'll get through the House? They have a 3-4 seat majority. I think it may be up to 5 at the moment. They have a 5-seat majority. No, I don't think that I say that. You know what? Actually, yes. Yeah, it's probably going to get through the House. It probably will, because Trump will force it through. And the only reason it'll get through the House is because those House members that'll end up kind of caving and voting for it, they know that it's dead on arrival in the Senate. It's not going to be able to get the number of votes. There's already senators who have said, hell no on this, there's no way. Now, do I think that a version of this bill will end up getting passed? Yes, because Trump is king. And he will manipulate and drive these people to vote for it. So some version of this, some variation of this. But you mentioned Trump, and his influence. It is funny, while he is trying to twist people's arms into voting for it, he's also like, they need to not go after Medicaid. They need to leave Medicaid alone. That's the central part of the bill, is that they're taking from Medicaid to go give it to old people and to pay for the military.
But that's Trump's, that's his entire MO,
yes.
Right? Is he relies on more people watching him than reading the details. Mm-hmm. It's worked great for him in his entire life. He has been successfully able to gamble on the fact that more people watch him than read about him.
It's a fantastic point.
That's what this is right here. Yes, to anyone who reads or researches, yeah, you can clearly see the juxtaposition of what this bill is, and yet Trump will, of course, say that it isn't, or that it shouldn't be. That's how he gets around it. He said it shouldn't be, don't touch it, it shouldn't be that. And yet at the same time he says, don't mess with the bill, don't change the bill's perfect, it's a big, beautiful bill. Because, again, he is relying on the people, his base, to watch the clips of him saying those things and not bother to do any other research, which is what they do. They watch TV, they listen to the radio, or to do anything which all they consume are his words, and they don't consume any other form of information when it comes to political action. And they will take that and say, oh yeah, why wouldn't that bill's fine, because he said he doesn't want to cut Medicaid, and then there's a bill, and it's it's a Trump bill, so it's a good bill.
Yeah.
And that's the logic. They have such little information because Trump specifically feeds them information that isn't. Well, it's a lie, yes, but it isn't like a blatant one. He's not saying this bill will never be, a 1 trillion cut to Medicaid. He frames it very, very specifically. Don't touch it. Don't do it. If you do it, it's on you, not on me.
Oh, and it also, he goes back to, who has been more of a defender of Medicaid than me? I can think of a lot of people, but that's what he always says. It's always stuff like that, and it's like, what the fuck are we talking about here? Like, in the debate last year, he went off talking about how he saved Obamacare. Bitch, you tried to get rid of it for years. John McCain saved Obamacare, you asshole. Like, it's infuriating, but you're right. They don't listen.
Right, but again, when you look at the base, what are they consuming? Are they consuming the facts and the research of
Nope.
the attempts that were done, of the failed attempts to remove Obamacare, Affordable Care Act, the saving of that through specific legislative action? No, of course not. They don't hear about any of that stuff because they only see and hear what he says, because that's all they consume. The only political news they consume are videos of him saying things. So, and he knows this. That's why he says, as long as I say this, I am confident, and in fact I have historical evidence behind me that these people won't look into it. And the people who do look into it are people like us who already hate the guy. who already have more than enough reason
Yeah.
to never want to vote for the guy, to never, be on his side about anything. So it's practically moot for for these kinds of conversations, in the sense where, like, we already know this stuff. We know he's full of shit. We know he's lying. But the people that need to know he's lying will never find that out, because they refuse to do that extra step, and all they get is what he says, which is why he keeps saying it, because it works. It works so frustratingly well. Ugh.
Wow. Well, you're speaking about propaganda, and on another note, Trump welcomed the South African president, Cyril Ramaphosa, to the White House, to the Oval Office. Another day, another embarrassing meeting with a foreign leader in the Oval Office. And Trump basically accused the South African president of facilitating genocide against white South African farmers. This is a conspiracy theory that has been tossed around. There is no factual basis for it. There is no factual evidence of it. And that is what the president of South Africa basically said when asked about, they asked Trump the question about the genocide, the white genocide going on in South Africa, or whether that was a thing. And the president of South Africa basically said, look, if that was happening, the people who are with me right now, many of whom are white Afrikaners in my administration, they would not be serving in this administration if that was the case. It's very, very clear this is not true if he listens to the people around him who would tell him that it's not true. Trump then goes, well, hold on, I do have to say, there's very bad things happening. I don't know, all of these articles over the last few days, this is a quote actually, quote, I don't know, all of these articles over the last few days, death of people, death, 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 horrible death, end quote. He then, he had them turn down the lights in the Oval Office to play a video. This is a clear, this is some weird setup thing here. A video that showed apparently Ramaphosa saying some inflammatory things, but none of which seemed to be saying anything to me about killing white South Africans or violence. I don't know exactly what they were talking about. There was some reference of violence, I should say that, but there was nothing that remotely talked about white genocide going on. Trump then threw up a whole bunch of printouts, looks like printouts from various things, and just held them up into the guy's face and was like, this is the evidence here. He then claimed that white South Africans were, quote, fleeing because of the violence and the racist laws. This is the sort of opposite of apartheid. What's happening now is never reported. Nobody knows about it, end quote. This is crazy. I do want to stress that Ramaphosa said in response, quote, there is criminality in our country. People who do get killed, unfortunately, through criminal activity are not only white people, majority of them are black people, end quote. So this was a wild meeting. I have plenty of thoughts about this, but I want to hear your thoughts first, Tyler.
This is all kind of like building off of this statement that Trump made like a week or so ago, in which he was tweeting about like openly welcoming white South African immigrants, and how he very, very strongly wants white South African immigrants to come to the U.S., which by itself is like, what the fuck, man? Like, you couldn't be more blatantly obvious in what in your desire and goals for this country in terms of its demographics than saying, I want to deport all the brown people and I specifically want white South Africans in this country. Like, you couldn't be more obvious. And I know people know this. I know it's obvious. But I mean, you got to say it out loud, You got to call it. You got to call them out loud. It feels better when I do it. But it's frustrating because of how much he feels like he could just say it out loud, the quiet part, and everyone just either agrees with him or shuts the hell up. But that's kind of like the foundation of, a lot of this, like, now language that he's using, right? These conspiracy theories. It really, really upsets me. Using language like genocide, especially in places where it does not exist, using it as like a conspiracy kind of trigger word and kind of throwing that around like it's nothing when we have actual genocide happening all over, that it has no recognition. You know, there are a lot of people, you know, of course you look at Gaza and Israel, right? And many people may consider that a form of genocide or leading to a form of genocide, which totally, right? And yet, of course, nothing being done about that. We have genocides that have happened a century ago. We have the Armenian genocide, happened a century ago. And for 100 years, like, all they wanted was people to recognize them, which still hasn't happened in most countries. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous how much people who have actually suffered actual genocide in the world have tried so hard to seek some sort of like acceptance, not even reparation, just like acceptance that it happened, right? Some sort of change for the betterment, with very little success, very, very unfortunately small success. You know, I live in Glendale, right? And so, you know, we have a massive, massive Armenian population here. I see the movements for Armenian genocide acknowledgements, you know, every year when they do it, during the anniversary. And yeah, it's a very serious thing for them, as it should be. But like, it just goes to show you, like, all they want is for it to be recognized, acknowledged. Like, look Turkey in the eye and be like, fucked up, you did this. And yet it's so hard for the leaders to do that. And, you know, you can't help but feel for the descendants of the victims of these horrid, horrid crimes. And so when I hear them throwing out genocide like that, I'm kind of like, fuck off, man. Like, that is such an insult. Such an insult to the people in this world who have been actual victims or descendants of actual victims of real life genocide, like actual genocide. This is not that. This is using language to make a political statement. He has no dignity and no respect for actual victims of actual crime and hate in this world. Trump, again, pissing off more world leaders it's funny. You know, I laugh at it because what else can you do? Because it's Trump, and he does this in literally every single person he wants to meet, except for apparently the really bad ones. He pisses off, right? You know who he doesn't piss off? Putin, apparently. You know who he doesn't piss off? Netanyahu. What the hell? Trump dismantling our foreign relationships with world leaders is ridiculous. He has a talent for it. He really does. And I can't see this as anything else but part of this like ploy of trying to control or redirect the flow of immigration into our country to align itself with what he believes to be, and I say in air quotes here, good migrants, right? The ones that we want, which he has made painfully clear from his own mouth are white people. Beyond frustrating, but I can't see this as anything else but a furtherance of that goal. And yeah, I mean, words can't describe how much I hate that and how much this just fumes me. But you know, you were just in South Africa recently, so I know you have quite a lot of knowledge on this and background on actual history here. I watched District 9, so I know a little bit.
Yeah, so I was in South Africa, and again, this is as a tourist, of course. So let's just put that out there. It was not like I was doing some intense journalism while I was there. But I do try to be a conscientious tourist. I'm not just there to in any sort of country to just kind of consume and not leave without understanding something about the nation that I have visited. And South Africa was fascinating to me. I've always been fascinated with it. One of my one of my playwriting idols, potentially my favorite playwright, was the late Athol Fugard, who just died back this past fall. Athol Fugard wrote a lot about apartheid. I've done a lot of research about apartheid. I teach about apartheid. It's a period that I'm very interested in. And to explain, first and foremost, to what Trump said. No, there is not a genocide of white people going on in South Africa. That is very clear, and no one in South Africa, white or black, was talking about genocide in South Africa of white farmers anywhere. No one was talking about that. No, even the people who are critical of the government, and we'll get to that because there's a lot of them, and they're not all what you think. There is no genocide going on. South Africa as a nation is the closest thing to race relations in the United States. It's the closest sort of comparable sort of societal influx of race being a deciding factor in terms of legality, in terms of law. The difference, of course, being that rather than slaves being brought to the United States, basically this was Afrikaners, which is the term for white South Africans, specifically of Dutch origin historically. But also, there's British influence, of course, in South Africa, all of that. But they essentially showed up to South Africa and took over for a very, very long period of time and tried to not just control the black population, but also force the black population to assimilate. There were protests of students who did not want to learn Afrikaner. That led to death. There was riots in which students and people were killed, as well as politicians were killed. There was a lot of violence going on throughout a very long period of time, and of course, dissidents in South Africa, people like Nelson Mandela, were put into prison, and I was able to see. I was able to see the cell where Mandela spent his time. I was able to understand kind of the general conditions of it, but also the amazing number of political dissidents and a number of people who were imprisoned over the period of apartheid. It is a disgusting period in world history. And so all of that is to say that, yes, what needed to happen happened, which was finally the black majority were able to vote, and they were able to elect a president, and they elected, of course, Nelson Mandela. And since Mandela took over in 1994, the African National Congress, which is the party in South Africa, has ruled pretty much consecutively from that point onward. And what became very clear to me in my time there is that while no, there is no genocide going on, this idea of like reverse apartheid, reverse racism, that's not what's happening. There is massive corruption, however. And that's the thing where I'm like, what Trump is doing is actually hurting South Africa, because they're going to respond to this, of course, by continuing further to add support. In the same way that Trump fucking with Canada led to the Liberal Party, maintaining control over Canada, you're going to have a party that was really on the ropes in the ANC. They just lost their governing majority. They had to have a coalition government, and they lost that last year for the first time since Mandela took over and the party took over in 1994. This is largely due to serious corruption. If you look at Ramaphosa, the president who's in the Oval Office today, terrible corruption. I have to say, not the sort of leadership that I want, putting people in positions that they know nothing about. I mean, Trump should love this guy. And the reality is, he should love him. Because it is a wildly mismanaged country, and you know who I'm hearing that from is not just white people in South Africa, a lot of black people. Very, very upset, and they're very angry, but they feel like they have no choice. They either choose the ANC, which is a incredibly corrupt organization that they know is corrupt. It causes blackouts, power outages, but never to the rich, wealthy areas of town. And the other option is like apartheid light. And the thing, I have to say it, and you're not going to like hearing this, but when I was visiting South Africa, the biggest comparable, the thing that came to my head the most, was California. It was, politically, because California, I can't tell you how many Democrats I know in California who are furious with Democratic lawmakers in California because they have had a supermajority, they've had control of the state, of the cities for huge periods of time, and they retain control because the right-wing party is so scary, is so generally scary that they feel like they have no choice. But all that has done is made the Democratic Party feel like they have, they don't have competition except from other Democrats. And so they have not solved problems. And honestly, this is the way that I have grown to feel about the California Democratic Party. It's the way I also would feel about Republicans in hardcore, right-wing states. When the other party is not a viable party in that state, then inherently people go to the extremes, corruption runs rampant. And so for me, that is what came to my mind. Do I think that Afrikaners have a right to flee as refugees? No. Do I think Trump welcoming them to the country is directly related to the person in charge of Doge who happens to be a white South African native? Abso-fucking-lutely. Okay? Who is a blatant racist. Let's just be clear. Elon Musk is a racist. And he comes from a country that has serious racial issues. It should not be a surprise that he has the sort of racial animus that he has. But yeah, I couldn't talk about South Africa without at least acknowledging the fact that what Trump is going to do is actually strengthen the party that is already unbelievably corrupt, and inflame the people on the other side of the equation in that country who are already very angry at the government and who are teetering on the edge of apartheid was better. I mean, I heard black people I genuinely heard black people. We had a black tour guide who told us, and again, I do not condone this, do not believe this to be true. I just want to clarify this. But he said apartheid was probably better. And I the thing that drove me nuts about that was I was like, you were born in 1986. You lived through you were 7 when apartheid ended. So that was the thing where I was like, come on, man. But there is an unrest that exists there, and honestly, it feels like a country that is on the verge of civil war in the same way that ours does. And I guarantee you that what Trump is doing is not going to help, because it's just going to exacerbate those tensions even more. People will fall more into their side of being pro-Trump, anti-Trump, whatever. If there is not a genocide going on in South Africa, but there very well may be violence as a result of this nonsense that he's pulling in inflaming these tensions.
That's exactly what I was hoping you would go into.
Hoping for violence?
No. Hoping for insight. Hoping for the insight. I think that's what that's what people are here listening for. Shall we move on to things we should all agree on?
Absolutely. Would you like to go first? Or do you want me to go first?
I think you should go first.
So, you know what we should all agree on? A little skepticism is healthy. Multivitamin level healthy, not conspiracy theory Reddit thread at 3 a.m. levels. That's where things go off the rails. It's okay. It's wise, actually, to question what we are told. Because, let's be real, Tyler, consensus has been wrong a lot, right? Look, remember in the 90s, do you remember this when we were growing up? We were told to save the earth by choosing plastic bags over paper. Save the trees, they said. It's not wrong to want to save the trees, but the idea that plastic was the great solution to that Now we're all drowning in microplastics and, like, sea turtles need therapy and shit. Like, it turns out the problem wasn't just deforestation, it was the mountains of non-biodegradable crap we were producing. But hey, we meant well. And this also makes me think of the great...
Thanks, Al Gore.
The Great Food Pyramid. Y'all remember this? The government-sanctioned nutritional guide that basically told us to eat 9 servings of bread a day. 9? Like, we were all supposed to turn into sandwich-based life forms. Kids grew up chugging milk like it was holy water and guzzling juice like it was medicine. That pyramid wasn't a guide. It was a carbohydrate cult. And now, half the population is lactose intolerant, pre-diabetic, or gluten-wary. Like, yeah, you need to be skeptical. But here's the catch, and this is where it gets messy. Healthy skepticism doesn't mean believe the opposite of whatever experts say. That's not wisdom. That's just rebellion dressed up as insight. Because when skepticism turns into conspiracy, things go dark. Real dark. Suddenly, vaccines are poison, elections are rigged without proof, and your aunt thinks the moon landing was directed by Stanley Kubrick. Look, society starts unraveling not because people don't believe things, but because they won't believe anything. Conspiracies give you a villain and a secret, and man, we love a villain and a secret, but they don't give you solutions. They just give you anxiety, paranoia, and a YouTube algorithm that makes you afraid of your microwave. It's a problem. It's our problem. January 6th was not a fluke. It was the inevitable conclusion of millions of people confusing "I'm asking questions" with "I've already decided the answers and the Illuminati is involved." So yes, question authority, question history, question me, question yourself. But do it with evidence, with thought, with the understanding that being wrong is part of growing, not proof that the whole system is rigged. We should all agree on that, because if we can't tell the difference between critical thinking and critical collapsing, we're not saving trees. We're just setting the whole forest on fire.
I mean, you can't not prove that Stanley Kubrick didn't direct the moon landing. I mean, have you seen... Listen. How was the flag flying without wind? How was it flying without wind, Jesse? How was there a shadow without the light? Jesse. It's weird, Jesse. Remember, did you see The Shining? That was a good movie, man. He could make things happen. I thought The Shining was real.
Here's Johnny!
Nah, in all seriousness, you make a great point. And I think that slippery slope of once you find the one thing that was actually incorrect, it makes you want to think that, well, what else is incorrect, right? Makes you think like that if one thing's a lie, and everything can be a lie. It's such a slippery slope for a lot of people. I think that's why so many people fall into conspiracies, because they've been taught for so long that there are certain entities in this world that are supposed to be universal truths. Like the government says something, it's true, right? And the moment that's broken, well, what else are they lying about?
Yeah.
Right? You could say similarly, we were talking about Biden. If they let one thing leak, right, about his fitness, well, what else is there? And that begging, again, it's good to inquire, right? But I think a lot of people, they see that and they start begging.
Yeah.
They're begging for more information, for more secrets. What's the best example of that? The Kennedy assassination. and the papers that were supposed to be like leaked, you know, and like when Trump was like, I'm gonna release the Kennedy papers, everyone's gonna know.
And then nothing.
Who shot Kennedy? Of course it was the CIA.
There was nothing.
Of course there was nothing, but there was enough intrigue, and there was enough of a question about what happened on that day that people were begging for an answer that was interesting, begging for a Hollywood answer. So much so that they made it up because they couldn't live without the idea that there was some great big conspiracy, right? That there was some great big James Bondian bad guy.
Yeah, you know,
they need that.
It's
weird.
And the perfect example really is COVID, because of where we couldn't figure out this balance. You had one side that was like, well, you told us not to wear masks, and now you're telling us to wear masks, so clearly you're lying. What else are you lying about? No, science evolves. We thought at first that it was spread mostly by touching things, and we found out it was mostly spread via air. We found out these things as we went, and the rational person understands that and doesn't think, oh, well, we need to, inject ourselves with bleach. But on the flip side of that, you had the people that just bought everything. Every single thing that was said, 100%, was I must do this and follow this, and anyone that questions this is dangerous. And that leads to people like myself getting reported for saying that it is a possibility that the coronavirus, that the COVID-19 virus started in Wuhan in a lab, not in a wet market, from a bat. And just saying that was a possibility got my whole Facebook post flagged and all of this crazy shit, and people sent me all these angry messages and all of this, people on the left. Again, so we went from the two sides of the extremes there. The people who had no skepticism, even when it was right in front of them, even if common sense would tell you that there's probably a belief. And then there's the people that believed that, not only was it made in a lab, but it was made as a chemical weapon, and it was put out here as, it's made to specifically not kill Jews. This is crazy. The
space lasers, man!
But that was a thing that people genuinely said. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. said that the COVID-19 virus was chemically was made with the intent of not killing Jews. It's a really, really horrible fucking thing to have said. This got brought up in his confirmation hearing. He said it. He said he didn't say it. He clearly did. He's on multiple podcasts having said it. So yeah, this he's one of the ones where it's okay, I get that you're skeptical about health in this country. You have a right to be skeptical about kind of health, because I do feel like, in a lot of ways, our health system is designed to keep people sick, or to make money off of people being sick rather than healing them. And that is a totally fair thing that should lead you to be skeptical. But that doesn't mean that you get to say crazy shit. You don't go down the rabbit hole on everything and get to all of a sudden say that you just don't believe doctors. That's crazy. This is where we have to have common sense and balance.
Mm-hmm. What's that difference between the system? A few weeks ago we were talking about the difference between Democrats and the DNC, right? Mm-hmm. The same exact thing, right? There's a difference between medical professionals and the system. Right? The medical system in America. Those are two different things. The system, it sucks. Everything that RFK Jr. Whines about, it's valid because those things can apply in some truth to the system. But the system aren't the people who work in that system, right? The healthcare professionals are not the system. Your doctor who sees you once a year, twice a year, is not the system. That's just a doctor trying to do their best, trying to help. You have to differentiate these things, or else, again, you just fly through the rabbit hole and, then who knows where we end up. But RFK Jr., if you're listening to this, I want to see your food pyramid. I want to see what you would recommend I eat. And just because I'm curious, man, I want to know. This man is so interesting. I want to know what
that's
he
one
would want
way
to
of
eat
putting it. That is one way of putting it.
17 pounds of meat.
Wow,
and
that was
one cucumber.
That's a good one. That's a good impersonation.
I'm working on it. So,
all right, what you got for us?
For my things we can all agree on, I wanted to talk about something a little different. As listeners probably have gathered from previous things we can all agree on that I've made, I spend a lot of time on the internet, particularly on places like Reddit, Instagram, and TikTok, and stuff like that. And I've noticed pretty apparent transformation in the way politics is observed, discussed, and how information is disseminated, for better and for worse, on these platforms. But this isn't going to be really about U.S. politics specifically. I want to discuss a more interesting trend that I've been seeing, and that is the increased interest, desire for, and borderline obsession of the city of Dubai and the products associated with it. Whether it's Dubai chocolate, or Dubai restaurants, or an overly expensive baklava served to you by a very, very short man in sunglasses, people cannot get enough of this city on social media and its wacky products and antics. I can't scroll more than a handful of posts in any platform without seeing some reference to it. Whether it's someone trying to recreate the Dubai chocolate at home, or someone spending $1,000 to get it shipped to their house, gold flakes and all. And what I want to spend my time here today to say is that I think we need to step back a bit and learn a bit more about this place, what happens behind the scenes, and who's in charge of it, before becoming blindly charmed by its apparent whimsy. Now, Dubai, if you don't know, is the most populous city in the United Arab Emirates, the UAE, a Middle Eastern country located on the shoreline east of Saudi Arabia. The land of the UAE and, of course, Dubai has a long and storied history. People have been living there longer than many other countries in recorded history. It has a rich culture and an incredible story of societal developments and perseverance. But its more modern history is what most people tend to know about, and especially considering the broader relationship that the Middle East has with the United States. And this is also the reason I wanted to focus on this in particular. To understand the way the modern country of the UAE operates, we have to focus on this part of its history in particular. And we have to look at its leadership, and boy, is that interesting. You see, the UAE is what they call an elective monarchy, which is very bizarre. Meaning its leaders rule for life, or until they voluntarily abdicate, but each monarch is elected by the people. Kind of sounds like a weird juxtaposition, but okay. But there's something kind of funny about that, with the UAE specifically, because since having this form of leadership, the UAE has only had 3 presidents, I say in big quotation marks, not including the 2 intermediary presidents that only serve 1 day each between presidents 1 and 2 and 2 and 3. Now, these presidents are, in order, and forgive me for my pronunciation, Zayed Al Nahyan, Khalifa Al Nahyan, and the current president, Mohammed Al Nahyan. Now, what do these 3 men have in common? Well, if you said their last name, you are correct. Khalifa and Mohammed are both the sons of the first president. They are the first and third son, respectively. So, fairly elected my ass, if you ask me. Don Jr., don't get any ideas. It's a hereditary monarch, no matter how you spin it. That's exactly what it is. Whether they want to say they're elected every 4 or 5 years or not, it doesn't matter, because these people have all been the monarchs until they've died. And with hereditary monarchies, as history has always shown us, it comes not just power, but an obscene amount of familial wealth. And these people have very, very large families. Zayed had 19 children, including the 2 that became future presidents. Khalifa had 8, and Muhammad had 9. Muhammad also has 22 grandchildren. This is a dynasty. This is a political dynasty. A dynasty of people so ridiculously wealthy that they will never lift a finger in their life. And many of these princes are among the wealthiest people in the world. So when you talk about wealth inequality in human society, this is like the crown example of it. So how are they so wealthy? I don't need to explain that. It's oil. Everyone knows that. The UAE has the 7th largest oil and natural gas reserve in the world. The world. And it has made them so much money it would make you sick. Now, where does this money go? I don't need to repeat myself. It goes to the family dynasty, of course. But now let's look at UAE as a country. Much darker than many people probably want to realize, but definitely what people probably understand it to be. It's got a 6.06 on the Human Freedom Index, a 3.01 on the Democracy Index, elected monarchy, and an 18 in freedom in the world, placing it behind countries like Iraq, Turkey, Qatar, and Cambodia. With its close relationship to the Islamic faith and its adherence to its practices, I'm sure all of this is of little surprise to many, but to the few of you that see your fancy Dubai TikToks, watching the hot ladies dance on the beach and the police drive around in literal race cars, which they actually do, it's crazy, you have to understand that that is all basically a lie. That city is effectively a lie in the way it is presented to you. Because you take 3 steps outside of Dubai in your skimpy little outfit meant for the beach, your head will be in a bag faster than you can say help. That is the reality of that country. It's not just outside the city either. Take one close look inside the city, within the city. Peel back just one small gold-plated layer, and you will see the pseudo-slavery that is taking place to keep that city well lit. To fluff your $5,000 pillows in those massive skyscraper hotels, or bake your $10,000 filet mignon. Take the time to look and you will find stories of abuse and captivity behind the gold-plated walls of the Dubai skyscrapers. This is the Dubai that should be discussed on TikTok and the internet. A city grossly disproportionate in wealth. It makes the US look like a Bernie Sanders wet dream. To give you a real-life example of this, I have a family member, I'll keep anonymous, works in cosmetic surgery. Great job. And especially good and in demand here in LA. But most of their business isn't here in LA or even here in the country. It's actually in Dubai. They go to Dubai maybe twice a year or so, books up appointments back to back for about a week, makes literally more money in that week than most of the entire year working normally 9 to 5 days a week here in the US, here in LA. Clients there are so filthy rich, they will literally pay any price they're given for any surgery they want. That doesn't happen here in the US, no matter how rich you think Hollywood is or the upper class is here. The money there is a whole different breed of ridiculous. Wealth here in the US is a far cry from true unburdened wealth, which is the kind you would see in the upper echelons of places like Dubai and Abu Dhabi. That is what Dubai is. It is unfiltered, uncapped, unabashed wealth for a percentage of the country far smaller than the percentage of the wealthy that we have here in this country. That's what we need to be talking about, and that's what we need to be thinking about when we see the version of Dubai that they want us to see on the internet. So, next time you're tweeting about how much you wish Jeff Bezos paid more taxes, but then you're simultaneously salivating at a TikTok of a tiny man serving gold-lined baklava, think for a second of the double standard that might create. That's what I got for you.
Yeah, I loved this. This was great. Couldn't agree more with you. I think in general, there is a certain segment of our population that tends to be very ignorant about the realities of how people are treated in certain other countries around the world. And sometimes we glorify these countries and view them as victims. Sometimes because we are looking at, countries that are majority not white, and we inherently view those as, countries, those people as victims. But there are victims in those countries and in many of those countries, and it's the citizens, and they're victims of their governments. And that doesn't always have to do with colonialism or imperialism. Yes, those are scourges that have caused problems throughout the globe. When we want to talk about South Africa earlier, that's a nation in which colonialism really fucked the nation from the start and has obviously, continued to impact, what is going on even now that they are post-apartheid. But a nation like the UAE, they are not exactly the sort of progressive-minded nations that you would think they would be based on the way that certain people talk about them, and that's a challenge in terms of engaging with the sorts of people that are making these arguments that you're talking about, or that are kind of glorifying these places. And yeah, it is crazy. I mean, Dubai is clearly. You see corporate America flocking to Dubai, and this is not new. This has been going on for several decades now.
I think since the 60s is when they kind of had an oil boom. And
the pictures are insane.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean,
if you look at like the then and nows in these places, not just there, if we're talking about Qatar, of course, we're talking about nations where all of a sudden there is this surge of wealth that's impacting a small portion of the population in many cases.
Like I hear so many good stories about Dubai in terms of like you go there and it's like, oh, it's gorgeous, like there's like every luxury brand store on earth can be found there, it's like, and while that's it seems nice, and again I see those videos of the people being served expensive food and it's ridiculous, and I'm kind of like, oh my god, one, that doesn't even look that great, two, none of these people understand what it took to make that country what you're looking at effectively, like what's the sacrifice that's being made to show you these like luxury things, and it's like, bro, any other part of that country, which again you're talking about one city, two cities if you want to count Abu Dhabi, two cities in an entire nation in which the entire rest of that nation, your life is in danger the second you leave those cities. Even in those cities, your life is in danger. Mind you, there are still plenty of stories of kidnappings and beatings and death of people pissing off the wrong fucking Saudi prince or whatever. But it is, it is something that I just wish more people had the understanding, and the knowledge of, right? But that's why we're here, to share the knowledge with you.
Yeah, it is certainly something that we are, conscious of, and we're going to continue to share our opinions and look forward to hearing from all of you about this. So, on that note, I think that's going to be our episode for this week. Thank you all so much for listening in. We hope you found it insightful. And please follow us on Instagram if you haven't already done that, at Reunited States Pod. Follow us. If you were listening to the podcast here, please follow us on whatever source you get your podcasts from. And with that being said, from the Creaky Tiki Room in Manchester, New Hampshire, this is Jesse Saywell.
And from Los Angeles, California, my name is Tyler Erg.
And this has been Reunited States.
When the whole world has got you down,
and there's no one else.